Join former FBI senior forensic examiners Becky Passmore and Stacey Eldridge as they dig into the world of digital forensics, one bite at a time. Now leading their own consulting firms and educating the next generation of cyber sleuths. These badass babes of digital forensics bring sharp insight, real-world case experience, and a dose of humor to the bits and bytes that build today's investigations. From deep dives into business email compromise and ransomware attacks, Becky's specialty, to cracking the complexities of iPhone forensics, Stacey's obsession. This podcast delivers insider knowledge for professionals, students, and true crime techies alike. If you've ever wondered what really happens when the digital trail is all that's left, tune in and start parsing the truth.
Welcome back to Parsing the Truth, one bite at a time. I'm Stacey Eldridge, your co-host, and with me as always is my awesome co-host, Becky Passmore. And we dive into digital evidence in this podcast, and we tell you how it helps break cases wide open in today's and even yesterday's modern crimes. Becky, what are we up to tonight?
Well, tonight we have a special guest with us, and we are extremely excited to welcome retired FBI agent, digital forensic examiner, Dave Freyman. So thanks for being with us tonight, Dave. We know you have a great digital forensic story to tell us about, so we're going to get started.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate being invited, and again, having to follow all the people that you've already interviewed is one of those things that I was like, okay, great. So, but thank you very much. I appreciate, humbly appreciate being invited for this.
You're going to do great. But first off, for our listeners, can you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Yeah. So as it was stated, I'm a retired FBI agent of 22 years. I'm currently working in the private sector in cybersecurity, and I actively teach undergrad and grad digital forensics and cybersecurity courses as well. And finally, I have, over 23 years of experience in not only digital forensics, but incident response, which is important because they are very different and distinct, in the approaches that they take.
Yeah,
Again, data is data, but it's the approach that they take, for it. So,
exactly.
and finally, I'll say this as well. Just with my experience, I've testified in over 30 trials and has been entered as a subject matter expert on numerous occasions.
That's awesome. So what is your role in digital forensics or investigations? And overall, how long have you done in totality the investigations and digital forensics?
Yep. So digital forensics, I did for 16 years straight. I had a wide variety of expertise, and not just, the operating systems themselves out there. We can go into each one of those, but, really the core ones. I have mobile forensics. I was an expert in that. Vehicle forensics. I did a lot of early on examinations and expertise. One of the big trials that I did initially in digital forensics was with GPS systems and tracking that for a murder.
We might have some stuff to ask you about in terms of vehicle forensics from a different case that was pretty popular in the news to get your perspective on that. We won't do it today, but maybe we'll bring you back for that.
Sure. All right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was definitely one of those up and coming new perspectives and new areas. And it's exploded even more. I mean, just about every single vehicle has smart technology.
Yeah.
With it. So vehicle technology and the information from it has been around for decades. And a lot of it was used for crash investigations and stuff like that. But with the smart technology transition, it's really explosive for cases and otherwise.
Yeah. So before we start on this case and your discussion of it and all the awesome things you did, is there any limits about what you can say?
Right. Even now, I am very reserved in what I discuss about cases. I kind of grew up with that. I was in the military prior to law enforcement. So really 32 years of government service. And, you don't talk about missions, you don't talk about cases and things like that. But, a lot of it has to do with, respecting, of course, the victims, the families, the friends of the victims, and the people that actually prosecuted it, and did a lot of the work and the investigations, because you don't want to misstep or misstate something that was not intentional, especially when a case has been, eradicated or completed, so long ago. You don't want to sit there and say, well, I recall this and it was some other case or something like that. I always have reservations about that. But speaking specifically to this case and Lauren Giddings, there was some things, evidence that was found that, is of personal nature that I obviously would not discuss, publicly for that. Again, with respect to the individual, the
Sure.
families and the friends and everything, like, in line with that.
Well, Dave, we are very excited to hear about this case. So let's just dig in, and you start from the beginning and what you want to share with the audience about this digital forensics case.
Yeah. So, I mean, the very first time I heard about this case was I was sitting in the office, as I usually do, working really hard. And the evidence recovery team from the FBI was actually on scene. It was a local case for the county and the local sheriff's office there. They were investigating, obviously, the murder, and evidence recovery was on scene. As they did their searches, they came across, as with anything, especially nowadays, digital evidence, believe it or not. And so they had called up our office to ask for assistance, which, of course, we definitely don't mind doing. And so I was asked if I could help. And I said, sure. I said, but it's 2-hour drive. And you have to go through Atlanta, which anybody ever around here would know. Atlanta traffic is about 3 hours, really.
Yeah.
But I had to drive through Atlanta, get to Macon, wait around, obviously, to sign all the evidence and inventory and, on scene to make sure I've got everything, and then go back to the office. And so that's another 2 hours. So I told the ASAC at the time who got in the call, and I said, probably would save about 2 hours of processing time if somebody drove it to me. And again, I'm not saying, hey, drive it to the FBI, pat ourselves. It was merely just saying, hey, I'm going to save you guys some time.
Yep.
A couple hours went by, and it was about 6 p.m. And I was like, are they bringing it up or what? And the ASAC goes, oh, I forgot to tell you, they decided to go with GBI. Now, that's another thing I want to state, is that nothing that I'm going to talk about in any way taints GBI and their work. Every agency is different. And, the locals, state, even other federal agencies may not have funding, equipment, training, time and expertise with other individuals that have been there, if that makes sense. So I'm not taking any way away from them in what I will discuss, but at times I was brought in to help out. And so their work with what they had done was impeccable, and they did a really great job. So I just wanted to add that as well. Again,
Yeah,
just
sure.
in case we have
And when we're
GBI listeners.
and when we're talking about GBI, we're talking about Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, of course. We throw around all these acronyms all the time, and you're right. Thank you for calling me out on that, because the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah.
I've worked with them on numerous cases. This was not the first, and it wasn't the last. And they are a really good bunch of people. Again, it's just simply, either funding or training or equipment and the expertise in certain areas that maybe we've run across before, and things like that. So
Sure.
Yeah. Well, especially way back when, because what year was this again?
2011. So
2011.
let's see, I started in forensics in 2004 for digital forensics. Actually, 2003. At the end of 2003, I'd started doing some on-site training and things like that, or hands-on apprenticeship, if you will. And then New Jersey got a RCFL at the time. And so I started with the New Jersey RCFL and the FBI in that big conglomerate program there. And so that training, and then got transferred down to Georgia. Anyway, so this is, just still an inkling, we're in infancy really of the major explosion of all of the digital media. 2007, the iPhone came out. So we're 4 years from that, from the release of that even.
Right. So do you finally get the evidence and to your office, or do you end up going to Macon?
So no, there's a little backstory to that. So I said, no problem. We had our own cases. As usual, like I said, we're willing to
You're
help.
like, I got
when we
plenty
get
of work to do.
Exactly. Like, I'm willing to help. And then they say, we got it. No problem. I'm not going to sit there and argue. I don't have time to argue even. And so I was okay with that. About a month later, I get a call from one of the persons that was with the evidence recovery team that was the liaison for the Macon office with GBI in this case, their FBI agent there. And she had said, hey, look, the investigation has come across a blog post that there was some significant blogs and stuff talking about the murder itself.
Okay.
So they had subpoenaed the blog site, and some individuals, I think, had provided the details saying that they thought this was the subject that they eventually arrested, that this was his moniker. And so they had subpoenaed it. Well, when they got it back, the date and time was in epoch time, which is really a series of numbers in seconds from January 1st, 1970, depending on which epoch time that you use, but that one in particular. And then the IP4, version 4, was hashed. So they didn't know what the IP came back from. So they were trying to determine those two things. And
Were they
look,
like, it says it's an IP address, but it's this weird number?
it's a hash, right.
Yeah.
So this hash is a mathematical algorithm that, can run against anything. It can run against a document, a period, word, even an IP address. So that's how they were storing them in their blog site, on their servers.
That's interesting.
And so I could do, and everybody in this room and just about, everybody you've talked to, I'm sure could do the epic time, like in their sleep, at least with the calculation and all that stuff. But it's very easy, right? And now the MD5 hash was a little bit more challenging in the sense that, again, we're talking about 2011. And so I had a way that I could manually go 0.0.0.0.0 and get the hash of that. And then 0.0.0.0.1, okay, but we're talking over 4 billion calculations.
Right.
For
you could just throw that into AI today and maybe it'd be right.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe.
I could have it in 10 minutes now.
Maybe.
But in truth be told, the usable public IPs are about 3.5 billion, but we're still, okay, so I took off 1 billion, we're still talking 3.5 billion. So talking about, and this will be one of my points that I'll bring up at the end as what significance of the case, but collaboration. So, the FBI had embedded computer scientists in the cybersecurity, squads. So I went over there and we had a good relationship, and I talked to him. I said, look, I can do this manually. He goes, yeah. I said, could you loop this? Because I had the idea. Like you talked about other people having ideas, and I had the idea. I just wasn't sure, and I hadn't done coding in a little while and such. So he said, yeah. So he ran
Brilliant
overnight, brought it back to me and said, okay, here they are. And there was 14 unique IPs out of over 300 posts. Okay. But I'm playing devil's advocate. And here's another point that I would bring up to any forensic investigator and things like that is don't just settle on what you get, validate it. Right. I said, all right, look, and you guys have been around as long as I have as far as digital forensics. So you know about the MD5 collisions and the whole, defense of, this hash may match something else. And you're like, okay, it's only been tested in a lab. They've proven it, but it was only lab. I've never seen it in the wild. I still haven't seen it, but really MD5s are going away. I think probably with more and more technology out there and the amount of data, it's likely it could happen, but I haven't seen it myself. But I said, because he ran it, and when it would hit, it would just take that one out of the equation and say, okay, we found this and move on. And it would run the rest of the numbers. I said, well, wait a minute. Have you run the 4 billion possibilities against this hash just in case it doesn't come across somewhere else, like twice? And he goes, no. I said, okay, can you do it again? Just again, I know the defense would ask that potentially, and sure enough, they did, because those are the types of things that were popular back then. It's those little things that they try to twist you with, and I'm not blaming them. I mean, it's a good question, right? And if you don't have that, well, I didn't test it. Okay, there's doubt, right? So anyway, so I did that, and still 14, still good, and 9 of them came back to Atlanta, Macon, and Mercer College
Okay.
area. The other 5 were anomalies. One was from overseas, a couple are from the Northeast, and one I think was out towards the West. And the significance about that, the reason why that was important, and which I learned later, is that the prosecutors had, as part of their reasoning to keep the subject locked up at the time, part of it, it wasn't entire, but part of it was that he had posted this specific thing about the murder. They believed it was him. Well, they had arrested him, and this post was after that. So it was a lot of the discussion for that, and they didn't realize that. It was okay. I mean, at the end of the day, the judge said, no, he's still staying in, whatever, because there was other circumstances around it, But that was another important matter. So my point is that I did like a 30-page report,
Wow.
14 IPs, but it's like how I found it, what's epic time, what are the locations and the radiuses, what is the dates and times, and all of that report. And I gave it over to the case agent, again, that was the liaison. And I said, okay, don't have the DA or anybody else come back to us. This is the type of, report that they would get, if I was doing all the evidence. And, anybody, like I said, around our class time, if you will, or our time that we got trained, would all do like these huge reports, because it was the significance of not the fluff. More is not the best. More is the accurate, or what is the significance of it, is really what it came down to. So that's where we ended up with for that. And then I didn't hear anything for about 2.5 years after. Well, I take that back. After I gave the report, they said, hey, look, we got all this evidence. Would you come by GBI, have a conversation with us and say, like kind of have a plan to, look at it and review it. What's important, maybe what's not, and how we can tie things. I said, sure. Like I said, so I went over to GBI and we had a conversation. It was a great conversation. They had a couple of pieces of evidence. One of them was a gaming system that was from the subject. And of course, I did a white paper for the Bureau on gaming systems in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave them advice on how to approach that. The significance of that was when they processed that, it happened to be the moniker for that gaming system happened to be the same moniker as their posting. So they had validity of
from
people
the
pointing them
blog
to,
site.
To the blog site. So they had validity of people calling in saying, hey, this is that person. We know it's that person or whatever. And at least they had that connection with that as well. And then it kind of went dark for 2.5 years. I wasn't not busy. I just hadn't heard from them in about 2.5 years.
You just didn't work on that case. Yeah, so let me ask you more questions about the IP addresses. So did you find out, did one of those come back to him, his address, or somewhere that he is?
Yeah, so they were all part of Mercer College.
Mm-hmm.
The complex they were in, they were using Comcast, and I think it was Comcast. One of them that comes back to Atlanta, that's Atlanta-based owned. And so all of those tied into that. Again, I handed over that. They would have to subpoena to get, the records as to where it went from there. Fast forward when I testified, because they wanted to throw the evidence out of my work for pre-trial testifying.
Sure.
The judge kept it in. But again, it was that amount of work, that amount of detail. And that's the other thing. Sometimes we think, oh my goodness, if I put too much in there, whatever. But you know what? You put a lot in there, you're going to remember things. Or I don't remember, let me recall. And it's right there, like your thought process or why you did what you did.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's another reason why, more is better sometimes, but not verbose, not like just fluff,
Right.
It's got to be mean something.
Yes, factual support. You present the facts and then you explain the facts. And sometimes it takes a lot of pages to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. So at that point, like I said, I didn't hear anything for 2.5 years. And then they wanted me to testify with a pretrial to throw that out. And of course, it was kept in. So that was, so I didn't hear from them until, like the fall of 2013 or the very beginning, like January, because I know that they were having some difficulties with, the lab, and some of the other evidence, not having problems with it. It was just delays, and things like that. So the trial was potentially going to be delayed again, but this was early in 2014 that they were trying to throw out some more evidence. And so they finally set a trial date for April of that year. So of 2014 is the next thing that they wanted to do. So, hold on. Monday, 3 weeks before the trial,
Okay.
the DA,
Always just a few weeks before the trial.
Becky and I are smiling
that
because we
next
know what's
call.
coming. You're lucky you got 3 weeks. But do
Well-
tell, what happens?
it's funny because you're right. I only had 3 weeks ahead of time because I first of all asked for it. I'm very much of a preparer. And it's not to practice my, testimony or rehearse it, but it's just to make sure that we got the facts down and just in general, what questions. I mean, you guys can send me questions about what you're going to ask, but guess what? It goes off to somewhere else, or you might ask something else that I wasn't expecting, but guess what? It's in line with what we're talking about. So that's not the issue, and that's not what I'm talking about. It's just getting these facts and kind of going back through this, remembering it was 2011, and the trial was 2014 and things like that. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But so 3 weeks before the trial on a Monday, I was asked to go to the DA's office to do trial prep. And I was like, okay, sure. Or that's when he said he was available. So I said, okay, sure. Because the week after, I was going to train some people, in forensics and stuff on whatever I was asked to do or whatever technique I had learned to teach, for the Bureau. And so I was going to be gone the week after. So that's why it was 3 weeks before. So anyway, so on that Monday, I drove again. I think I explained this before. It's like 2 hours with no traffic. And again, it's Atlanta, so there's always traffic. So I drove about 2 hours to get to the meeting. And he calls me in and he goes, all right, we're going to ask you the same things that we asked you in the pretrial testimony. And I'm like, you may need for just to tell, and I have a transcript of my testimony, right? I said, I could have looked over those, not that the questions would be exactly the same as I said, but at least it's really what I did anyways.
Yeah.
And it's that line of questioning, right? So I looked at him and again, we had a very friendly nature and, we're professional and stuff. And I did ask him that in that way. I was like, you call me down here. And I said, okay, is there something else on your mind? There seems to be something else on your mind. He had that look. And again, I guess that's where the investigator comes out of me and the FBI, but,
you read his face.
Yeah, I did. And he goes, yeah. So we're gathering all the evidence up and, there's some at the county because it's with the county. So some of the evidence is at the county. Some of it's obviously with GBI, the digital forensics and stuff or digital media. And then there's stuff at the FBI, whether it's the blood testing and, all that kind of stuff, that all the other physical evidence that they were looking at that the FBI is really good at looking at or helping out with. So he said, we were going through the inventory and we came across a camera that we realized nobody had looked at yet. I said, okay.
There it is.
Yeah. So he goes, so Friday, GBI came by and picked it up and they imaged it, they took an image of the camera and stuff, the memory in there. And there's like 10 what appears to be 10 videos on the last evening that Lauren was known to have sent an email. So I think that was on the 25th of June, 2011. So that evening she sent an email out or whatever, and that was the last anybody heard from her, or at least a message that purportedly came from her, right? I mean, at that time it wasn't known. But anyways, that was the last that anybody heard from her, was the evening of the 25th. So there's videos from the 25th and early in the morning on the 26th. I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? He goes, they were all deleted and they can't recover the videos, or they've recovered these videos or whatever, these files, but they can't get them to play. I was like, okay. He goes, would you mind looking at them? I said, okay, sure. I said, but again, keep in mind, they need to make a working copy, right? Because they're the leads. I don't care about the glory about anything or stepping in or whatever, it's really about getting to the truth, again. So I said, yeah, sure. So I drove by GBI on my way back because they were on the way back and grabbed a working copy of the videos, went back to my office. Another colleague that I work with, again, happened to be in the office, collaboration, conversation. I said, hey, look, I got these videos and they want me to find out something that can recover me. He goes, oh, yeah. So we're both looking. And again, I don't know who found what, but we both looked and searched and we found a couple of things. And there was a demo version of one of a file recovery. And so I said, yeah, let me try that. So I tried it and it recovered like the first 8 to 10 seconds of each of these videos. So anyways, so I have this eight to 10 seconds. So I was like, okay. So I call headquarters again. This is where money comes in and equipment and things like that. And I said, hey,
Resources.
because as well as I do, testing and validation and, all that stuff. We had to go through a process. We couldn't just buy our own equipment as much as even software or whatever,
Right.
as much as I thought that we could or should or whatever. But anyway, so I called up headquarters. They were like, yep, absolutely. They got on it the next morning. I got a license copy, got all of them recovered. The assistant DAs happened to be in our office in evidence downstairs collecting all the evidence. And I called them up and I said, hey, do you guys mind coming up here? Because I really wasn't sure 100%. And just to be forthright, I never went to the crime scene. I didn't collect the evidence there. So I wasn't familiar with anything. And I purposely don't really watch the news, or I don't even really have TV and stuff like that. So I just don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, more so because I don't want to be tainted by what's being talked about and what's not, and, all that stuff. But so I wasn't sure what I was looking at. And the first probably, 8 to 10 seconds or whatever is a blur on each one of the videos. And I was like,
That's
what is
interesting.
that? And then all of a sudden it shows inside an apartment, what looks like to be an apartment or whatever. But anyways, so it looks like it's shining in there. You see a couch set up with a TV and a foyer with a table where you put your keys. There's a purse on the back of a table behind the couch, whatever they call those. My wife would probably know, as fancy as it is.
I think it's
I
just
just
a
know
sofa
it's something
table,
to put
isn't it?
stuff, more junk on,
Yeah.
But anyways, a purse was there and things like that. So I called them up and said, and so they came up, 2 of them, and they were like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this. I was like, what? They go, that is Lauren's apartment. She was on the 2nd floor, and that window is on the court side of the complex. And I said, oh, okay. And one of the ADAs was like, that purse is her purse, and that was sitting exactly where it was when they did the search and everything else. Everything that you see there is exactly how it was when they went in to search.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. And so a couple of significant things came out of that. Obviously, it was a huge break in the case because one of the early parts of the investigation, a lot of people in the complex and everything like that, all of them were interviewed and things like that, which again, I didn't know. I didn't have that stuff, but they were telling me that somebody in the complex was walking in the courtyard and it was late at night and they saw the subject there and they were like, oh, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm just hanging out. He had a pool skimmer in his hand, and that's what he had the camera to. Now the individual was dark and stuff, didn't see the camera on there, or he could have taken it off in between shots or whatever just to hang out. But he had the camera on the pool skimmer and was lifting it up to the 2nd floor to see in the window.
Oh, from outside of her apartment, the victim's apartment.
Yep.
The subject was outside, camera on the pool
Going
skimmer.
up.
Because did they have selfie sticks back then? But he needed a long.
Oh, they didn't have selfie sticks back then.
He needed
Remember,
a
there
long
wasn't
stick to get some height.
Yeah. It
peek
just needed
in.
to get it up to the 2nd floor because it's 2-story,
Yeah.
And there was no porch or whatever landing or anything like that. It was just the window side, So
Yeah.
So that was the first significant thing. And the ADA pointed out something else that, at first glance, I didn't catch because, again, I wasn't on the scene or I didn't know much about it. But when they went into the apartment, they noticed there is I don't know if you guys have ever seen that sort of triangle shaped, I don't know if you've seen triangle shaped, door stopper. It's long on the base. And then it has a kind of a rod that fits underneath the door handle, right? So that if somebody's trying to open it up, they can't. It's jammed. It's a door jam, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's for the inside.
Right.
And so obviously their friends had gotten into the apartment, went in to check on her, and that's when they called the cops because it was, she wasn't there and stuff. But that's the thing is that night it's not on the door. It's not, the door jamb is not in place. So I think two things. The subject was looking to see if she was asleep yet or not. And secondly, or any movement. And secondly, was trying to determine if the door jamb was there. Because this individual, I guess, volunteered to be sort of a secondary maintenance person around there. So if somebody's light bulbs went out or anything, and he had a key to all the apartments to help do that. So I think he's been, I know he's been in her place before. And that I'll tell you about that here in a minute with some additional stuff that I found. But so he knew about the door jamb, and I think he was seeing if it was in place.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
So the next part of that was like both of the ADAs stopped and looked at me and said, okay, can you please look through all the digital evidence and see if we've missed anything? And I said, happy to help out, but I will not be driving anything. The analyst from GBI can, make them look like they missed something. And if they did miss something, then, try to make them look bad.
Right.
Again, another significant thing about us and our training, especially back then, is that we just never duplicated.
Right.
No
analysis. Duplicate exams, right?
Yeah, right.
Don't want to have two subject matter experts going against each other in a court. So, yeah.
And, the main reason behind that is really because the defense can try to pit one against the other or at least put doubt. And look, I'll just put it out there. If Stacy's asked to look for A, she's going to look for A.
Yeah.
And if the case progresses and all of a sudden we're looking at B and C and Becky's asked to look at it, even though Stacy wasn't asked to look for anything other than A, right? Especially if it's a search warrant that limits her, view or whatever.
Yep.
It could try to make Stacy look bad to say, oh, well, you didn't find it. Why didn't you? Or Becky, why didn't you find A? Or what, because you weren't looking for A, you were looking for B and C because the case has progressed or whatever. So that's another reason. It has nothing to do with the individual. But again,
defense strategy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they did in the Karen Reed trial to some extent with Jessica Hyde and Ian Whiffen. Well, why didn't you look at this? Why were you only looking at this?
Yeah,
and they're trying to be like, oh, your window of what you were supposed to look for was too tight. If you had looked elsewhere, then you would have found something else.
Yeah.
So it's just the defense strategy.
It's
right.
A defense.
But then if you, again, as your expertise go, look, I've been down this road a lot and I know what and where to find certain evidence based upon a crime. I still can't do that or shouldn't. And again, the defense would say, oh, you went too wide if they're saying you went too narrow. It's a little back and forth. So again, to avoid that, I said, hey, come to our office. I got a wide space. Come on in. They sat right next to me. They brought a big hard drive with all the evidence, threw it in some reviewing commercial software that we had. Again, money, equipment, processing speed or whatever. I wasn't looking at finding every little nugget or doing a keyword search. I didn't care about that, so much. What I wanted to do was to find specifically, especially based upon the search warrant parameters, but look for things that related specifically to the murder and what evidence we knew and where we were at that point. So there's a couple of things. First of all, there was a USB drive that was found in the subject's residence, the apartment that he had, that Lauren had claimed that she had misplaced or lost her a USB drive that she had. Hers was found in the subject's apartment. Now he tried to claim, oh, I found it outside, didn't know whose it was or anything like that. Well, again, looking at the metadata, that thumb drive was plugged in. So he knew because it had her stuff on there. So he can't say that he didn't know, even if he didn't know up until the point that he found it, he could have gotten it back to her at any time. That's the first thing. Second thing is that I found a hidden folder that contained a lot of specifics to Lauren and to some personal things, again, that, we talked about at the beginning that I wouldn't discuss, but there was some personal things that were there that was hers that, just showed his mindset, I think, in his attempt to connect with her. And so that was a second thing that was found, a hidden folder with all that. So that was another piece of evidence. The third thing was I say we, again, sitting next to the GBI analyst, I found another folder that was hidden as well that had all of the similarities to Lauren. And this individual later was found to live in the complex as well.
Oh my goodness.
It's my expert opinion that, again, based upon the modus of things and how it went, that could very well have been another victim had this individual not been caught. So,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah. So putting all that together, the camera video, all the things that were found on the computer. Now let me go back to one thing. So GBI did attempt to do certain searches and get a mindset of the individual and found a lot of explicit sexual content words and, things like that, or whatever search terms in the browser history and all that kind of stuff that lent to that credibility as well. But that is pretty much where at least their point was of the mindset of this individual until we found that other stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got the camera, that all those videos of the night of the last message into the next morning were found. The other evidence on the computers.
Two hidden folders.
Yeah, and the hidden folders and such. And then all of that was on a Wednesday. So again, Monday I get the thumb drive. Tuesday I recover the videos and the ADAs come down. They want me to, so I sit all day on Wednesday, GBI. Thursday, they go back to the DA, set down everything that they have now that's new and just, whatever. And Friday they call the defense. Now that Sunday I was flying out to go to my training and teach. And that Monday, the defense, week before they were to go to trial, they entered a plea. So they were going to trial. As a matter of fact, even the defense attorney says, they didn't have much. I mean, it's kind of circumstantial, right? You got a thumb drive.
Right.
You could find that anywhere. I mean, even if he plugged it in, maybe he just didn't have a chance to get it to her, or in passing or whatever, because she worked, he was at school, whatever reasons, there could be a lot of circumstantial or explanations, if you will, that could kind of put certain things to rest. But having certain articles for clothing and stuff like that, that's a little bit more,
Right.
I guess.
Well, he found a pile of her clothes with the thumb drive in it on the floor in the complex.
Yeah, in the laundry room, and it was in the pocket. Yeah, and it was washed, but the thumb drive still works. I'm just saying.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But that's there. All sorts of stories can be laid out there in court to explain things.
That's exactly
and so that's like why you're writing good, solid reports to really explain all of the facts out there of what that means, because that's going to help counter anything that may not be based in fact.
Right.
And that is a critical and key term, facts, right? Like I said, we're not into writing narratives, right? When I said
that is the hardest thing and Dave, you tell us if you experience stuff with your students, but I have a lot of students who write their written reports for their digital forensics cases, and it is written like the next great American fiction novel. And I'm like, no, facts.
We just need some facts. That's right.
That's right. And like I said, it can be long or articulate.
Right.
When I say narrative, I don't mean like you said, kind of telling the tale of two cities, narrative.
Right.
We're talking about the evidence. And if there's a lot of information in there because you're covering it, or, down the road, you want to remember this, 3 or 4 years later with testifying. I mean, the statute of limitations runs out in 5 years for a lot of crimes, so, and 10 years for, a lot of when the bank fails happen in, under Bush, the first Bush, President Bush, that they increase the statute of limitations for the mortgage fraud, for the bank failures to 10 years for those, just because it was so much volume of cases and the amount of loss, that kind of thing. So that went on. So it just depends though. But narratives don't mean writing fiction or just filling in another page, because, you don't want to sit there and go, wow, this is a great report, man. This is a good B report. It's like, no, your subject matter expert
Right.
analysis,
Right. Exactly.
So
So, Dave, this case was actually presented on Dateline, right?
yeah, so that the thing, a lot of cases that I've been a part of have, done these, Datelines or other shows and things like that.
People go on to podcasts and talk about them and whatnot.
Well, no, years later and stuff, but I'm talking like right in the moment and things like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
This seemed like, and I will tell you guys again, from the time that she, was found murdered, or at least part of her body and things, and known when the last thing and, her last day and stuff. Um, from that time, it almost seemed like it was so quick, like a year. And then Dateline came out and they were like, oh, okay, we're doing this thing. And they had asked, and of course the Bureau has to give approval. And by the time they do it, and I don't mind. I didn't care whether or not, but I will say this, the DA had at the beginning of that show, they made a very direct comment that the FBI recovered videos that, that were instrumental. And then at the very end, the DA was saying, hey, if they didn't have that, we wouldn't have had something to go with. I mean, more so than the evidence that they had.
Well, sure.
Not to say it wasn't strong, but I will say this. It just seemed very quick when they did it, but they did it because he entered a plea. And I was under the impression when he entered the plea that because they took the death penalty off, that he couldn't appeal, which I guess, again, not being on the legal side, I didn't know that he does have a right to obviously appeal. And he has been trying, and the first one was thrown out or denied or something like that. And he's still trying to appeal certain things with maybe the defense that he had or other aspects of it, but
Yeah.
still the facts lay it out.
Yep. And do you recall the name of the episode so we can let our listeners know to look for it?
Stranger Watching, I think. I'd have to look it up. You guys can
Nice.
look.
We can put it in the show notes. So if you
Yeah, put it in the
Yeah.
show notes. I forgot. It's a Stranger Watching or something.
And it's what was the victim's name?
Lauren Giddings.
Giddings. Okay. Yeah. That'd be really good. I know that a lot of our listeners are true crime enthusiasts that are very interested, and so, pointing them to the direction of the more details about the case, and then knowing, because of your efforts, because of your due diligence and intelligence and, you know, expertise, being able to recover those videos, made them move forward with that case.
Well, like I said, first of all, Line did an excellent job on the case and how it progressed, the collection of evidence and things like that, the interviews. So you get a lot of that side. But I think more importantly, this program itself is this podcast is really delving into the digital forensic side that a lot of people don't get unless you guys or people like you, get that story out there to be able to tell. And I will say this as well, or reiterate the point. Yeah, I mean, I found a lot of stuff. It's based upon expertise and things like that, but it was a collaborative effort. I mean, even knowing certain limitations that, one may have, because again, we can't be experts in everything, but we can certainly find people that are experts. And that's the other thing is one of the important aspects of collaboration is it can't always be one-sided. You can't keep going to the well because eventually the well will dry. You got to share your knowledge and your expertise and, provide something to others that are seeking, your help, not always the other way around. So make sure when you are collaborating and things like that, that it's a team effort, that it goes both ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Especially sharing your knowledge, even if you guys aren't asking, if there's some breakthrough on stuff, and I see it all the time. You see blog posts and things like that. A lot of great people in forensics,
Oh, yeah.
they create a tool that parses something, and they may only use it once for one case, but guess what? There's probably 100 or
People out.
1,000 cases out there for that same exact thing, and they post it as open source or whatever. Again, test it, make sure it works, but it helps in a lot of ways. And you can tweak it, or you could take that idea and use it for something else for another similar type case, but it gives you that jump start. There, you don't always want to start at zero, right? You
Yeah.
always want to move forward and keep moving forward. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, last question, I guess. At the end of all of this, can you tell us why you think that this case was particularly significant in terms of digital forensics or in terms of things people can learn from all the work that was done in this case on the digital evidence?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway, as I said, was collaboration, never giving up, and there's always something else to find. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, what is the saying? You never stop working a case, you just walk away. At some point, got to
Yeah,
walk away.
and that is so true.
Never
You
know.
have to walk away, or yeah, I mean, you could be mired in it. And if I may go back to one thing that I said at the very beginning, I do
Yeah.
incident response now, and I say it's very different because, with digital forensics, you're getting what they say, the whole enchilada, the whole, like you got the whole computer and you're imaging everything and you're looking through every single byte. In incident response, you're getting log files. The log files are the same when you gather them as they were on the host, but it's just a snapshot of what's going on because that's all you care about, right? An
Mhm.
Yep.
infection or otherwise. You're going through that. So you kind of have to have that mentality of finally going, okay, we found the root cause. We're going to move on. Was root cause, lateral movement, and data exfiltration. That's pretty much the focus on any or most incident response. And so digital forensics, you kind of have to have those 3 points. Like, okay, when I get to this, this, and this, maybe when I run out of coffee or something, I'm done with the case. I don't know, something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, all the details about this case. I know our listeners like to hear about cases and investigations, so very much appreciate your time in sharing this story.
Well, like I said, I really appreciate being asked. I'm amongst a lot of great people before me, and I know there'll be a lot of great people that you guys interview. Hopefully, continue, after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and as always, keep parsing the truth one bite at a time.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us to get notified the next time a new episode drops. If you can do more, head on over to parsingthetruth.com and donate by clicking on the donate button. Parsing the Truth is a nonprofit organization, and we are raising money to send a new digital forensic examiner to IASIS training next year in Orlando. Thanks.